13. Florence Easton. Problems confronting the young singer. English by birth, American by marriage, beloved in every country where her art is known, Florence Easton, after 10 years of activity in the music centers of Europe, is now making her home in America. Madame Easton is a singer whose attitude towards music is one of deepest sincerity. No one could witness her beautiful, sympathetic investiture of the Saint Elizabeth of Liszt, or some of her other important roles, without being impressed with this complete, earnest sincerity. It shines out of her earnest eyes and frank smile as she greets the visitor. It vibrates in the tones of her voice as she speaks. What can even a whole hour's talk reveal of the deep undercurrents of an artist's thought? Yet in 60 minutes many helpful things may be said, and Madame Easton, always serious in every artistic thing she undertakes, will wish the educational side of our talk to be uppermost. The young singer. I have a deep sympathy for the American girl who honestly wishes to cultivate her voice. Of course, in the first place, she must have a voice to start with. There is no use trying to train something which doesn't exist. Given the voice and a love for music, it is still difficult to tell another how to begin. Each singer who has risen, who has found herself, knows by what path she climbed, but the path she found might not do for another. There are quantities of girls in America with good voices, good looks, and a love for music. And there are plenty of good vocal teachers, too, not only in New York, but in other large cities of this great country. There is always the problem, however, of securing just the right kind of a teacher. For a teacher may be excellent for one voice, but not for another. The studio versus the concert room. The American girl, trained in the studio, has little idea of what it means to sing in a large hall or opera house. In the small room her voice sounds very pretty, and she can make a number of nice effects. She may also have a delicate pianissimo. These things are mostly lost when she tries them in a large space. It is like beginning all over again. She has never been taught any other way but the studio way. If young singers could only have a chance to try their wings frequently in large halls, it would be of the greatest benefit. If they could sing to a public who only paid a nominal sum and did not expect great things, a public who would come for the sake of the music they were to hear, because they wanted the enjoyment and refreshment of it, not for the sake of some singers with big names, they would judge the young aspirant impersonally, which would be one of the best things for her. Value of honest criticism. Frequently the trouble with the young singer is that her friends too often tell her how wonderful she is. This is a hindrance instead of a help. She should always have someone who will criticize her honestly. The singer cannot really hear herself, that is, not until she is well advanced in her work. Therefore, she should always have the guidance of a teacher. I never think of giving a program without going through it for criticism. The office of critic is a very difficult one, especially if you are to criticize someone you are fond of. Mr. McLennan and I try to do it for each other. I assure you it is no easy task to sing a program knowing someone is listening who will not spare you, and will tell you all your faults. I know this is all very salutary, but it is human nature to wish to hear one's good points rather than the poor ones. I sometimes say, "Do tell me the good things I did." But he says he does not need to speak of those. I only need to know my faults in order that they may be corrected. It is so easy to overdo a little, one way or the other. For instance, you make a certain effect, it goes well. You think you will make it a little more pronounced next time. And so it goes on, until before you know it you have acquired a definite habit, which the critics will call a mannerism and advise you to get rid of. So the artist has to be constantly on the watch to guard against these incipient faults. Breathing exercises. Asked what kind of breathing exercises she used, Madame Easton continued, "No doubt each one has her own exercises for the practice and teaching of breath control. For myself, I stand at the open window, for one should always breathe pure air, and I inhale and exhale slowly, a number of times, till I feel my lungs are thoroughly clear and filled with fresh air. Then I frequently sing tones directly after these long inhalations. A 1-octave scale, sung slowly in one breath, or at most in two, is an excellent exercise. You remember Lilli Lehmann's talks about the long scale? But the way in which she uses it perhaps no one but a layman could imitate. What a wonderful woman she was and is. She has such a remarkable physique and can endure any amount of effort and fatigue. Every singer who hopes to make a success in any branch of the musical profession should look after the physical side and see that it is cared for and developed. Study the piano. If a girl is fond of music, let her first of all study the piano, for a knowledge of the piano and its music is really at the bottom of everything. If I have a word of advice to mothers, it should be, let your child study the piano. All children should have this opportunity, whether they greatly desire it or not. The child who early begins to study the piano will often, almost unconsciously, follow the melody she plays with her voice. Thus the love of song is awakened in her, and a little later it is discovered she has a voice that is worth cultivating. How many of our great singers began their musical studies first at the piano? On the other hand, the girl with a voice who has never worked at the piano is greatly handicapped from the start when she begins her vocal studies. As she knows nothing of the piano, everything has to be played for her. She can never be independent of the accompanist. She loses half the pleasure of knowing and doing things herself. Full or half voice? Asked if she used full or half voice for practice, Madame Easton replied, I do not, as a rule, use full voice when at work. But this admission, if followed, might prove injurious to the young singer. In the earlier stages of study, one should use full voice, for half voice might result in very faulty tone production. The advanced singer, who is past the experimental stage, can do many things the novice may not attempt, and this is one of them. In regard to memorizing. Here again my particular method of work can hardly be of value to others, as I memorize with great rapidity. It is no effort for me. I seem to be able to visualize the whole part. Music has always been very easy to remember, and with sufficient concentration, I can soon make the words my own. I always concentrate deeply on what I am doing. Lately, I was asked to prepare a leading role in one of the season's new operas, to replace a singer at short notice, should this be necessary. I did so and accomplished the task in 4 days. Mr. Caruso laughingly remarked I must have a camera in my head. I know my own parts, both voice and accompaniment. In learning a song, I commit both voice and words at the same time. Feeling deeply during performance. I feel the meaning of the music, the tragedy or comedy, the sadness or gaiety of it each time I perform it, but not, as a rule, to the extent of being entirely worn out with emotion. It depends, however, on the occasion. If you are singing in a foreign language, which the audience does not understand, you make every effort to put it over, to make them see what you are trying to tell them. You strive to make the song intelligible in some way. You may add facial expression and gesture, more than you would otherwise do. All this is more wearing because of the effort involved. Language. This brings us to another point, the study of languages. The Italian sings nearly all his roles in his own tongue, with a few learned in French. With the Frenchman, it is the same. He sings in his own tongue and learns some parts in Italian. But we poor Americans are forced to learn our parts in all 3 languages. This, of itself, greatly adds to our difficulties. We complain that the American sings his own language so carelessly. An Italian, singing his own language for his own people, may not be any more careful than we are, but he will make English, if he attempts it, more intelligible than we do, because he takes extra care to do so. The duty is laid upon Americans to study other languages if they expect to sing. I know how often the study is neglected by the student. It is another phase of that haste to make one's way which is characteristic of the young student and singer. Take, for example, the girl in the small town who is trying to do something with her voice. She believes if she can get to New York or some other music center and have 6 months lessons with some well-known teacher, she will emerge a singer. She comes and finds living expenses so great that only 1 lesson a week with the professor is possible. There is no chance for language or diction study or piano lessons, yet all these she ought to have. And 1 vocal lesson a week is entirely inadequate. The old way of having daily lessons was far more successful. The present way vocal teachers give lessons is not conducive to the best development. The pupils come in a hurry, one after another, to get their 15 or 20 minutes of instruction. Yet one cannot blame the teacher, for he must live. The ideal way. The ideal way is to have several lessons a week and not to take them in such haste. If the pupil arrives and finds, on first essay, that her voice is not in the best of trim, how much better to be able to wait a bit and try again. It might then be all right. But, as I said, under modern conditions, this course seems not to be possible, for the teacher must live. If only vocal lessons could be free, at least to the talented ones. It seems sad that a gifted girl must pay to learn to sing, when it is a very part of her, as much as the song of the bird. If I had plenty of money, I would see that many of them should have this privilege, without always looking at the money end of it. Amount of daily practice. It seems to me the young singer should not practice more than 2 periods of 15 or 20 minutes each. At most, one should not use the voice more than an hour a day. We hear of people practicing hours and hours daily, but that is probably in books. The voice cannot be treated as the pianist or violinist does his fingers. One must handle the voice with much more care. Opportunities for the young singer in America. The chances for the American singer to make a career in concert and recital are abundant. In no other country in the world do such opportunities exist. If she can meet the requirements, she can win both fame and fortune on the concert stage. In opera, on the other hand, opportunities are few and the outlook anything but hopeful. Every young singer casts longing eyes at the Metropolitan or Chicago Opera as the goal of all ambition. But that is the most hopeless notion of all. No matter how beautiful the voice, it is drill, routine, experience one needs. Without these, plus musical reputation, how is one to succeed in one of the 2 opera houses of the land? And, even if one is accepted for small parts, what hope is there of rising when some of the greatest artists of the world hold the leading roles? What the American singer needs is opportunity to gain experience and reputation in smaller places. Several years' drill and routine would fit the aspirant for a much broader field. This would give her command over her resources and herself, and perfect her voice and impersonations if she has the gifts and constantly studies to improve them. Even England, so small compared to America, has 7 opera companies that travel up and down the land, giving opera. They have done this during all the years of the war. This question of providing opportunity for operatic experience in America is one which has long been discussed, and many experiments have been tried without arriving at satisfactory results. What is needed is to awaken interest in opera in small places, just little out-of-the-way towns. My idea would be to have a regular stock local opera company and have the standard operas studied. Have a little orchestra of about 20 and a small chorus. The small parts to be learned by the most competent singers in the place. Then have the few principal roles taken by guest artists, who might make these engagements in regular route and succession. It seems to me such a plan could be carried out, and what a joy it would be to any small community. But people must gradually awake to this need. It will take time.